All right, we are ready to begin. It's the top of the hour. I know many will be jumping on. Thank you um, for joining us. Welcome to this episode of Ask Pastor Tim. This is actually episode number 18, and my name is Tim Jones, and I am your host. I have my friend and brother that's joining me here tonight, Nelson Benavidez, Nelson the Realtor,
Yes.
and we're going to have a really lively conversation tonight. Really excited about what we're going to be talking about. It is what's important in this moment and in this hour. We come on here every other Tuesday to bring subjects and topics to you that are important to individuals, to families, important to you if you want to grow, if you want to discover who you are, if you want to maximize your potential in the earth, then come on and join us and engage in our conversations, ask questions. That's what we're here for, is to bring truth on every topic. We apply as much of the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding that we have to every topic. And when we don't know, we ask. We ask for the wisdom, we ask for the understanding, and we ask for the knowledge that we might have a sense of what we're to do with any given subject, any given topic. And so, again, thank you for joining us tonight. I'm gonna do a little housekeeping here, and then we're gonna jump right into our topic. If you've followed me at all, particularly this year, you know that there are three topics that I intentionally make a part of every conversation. The first one is original design. That's something that in this season has become very important to me, because I believe that if more people align themselves with their original design, we'd have less of some of the problems and issues that we have with people, and particularly with people and other people. We'd have fewer of those types of issues, because when you begin to align with your original design, many of the things that tend to bog us down and present itself as obstacles to us, they cease to be. A lot of the issues, well, if you ask me, I'll say every issue is going to find its way back to an identity issue. We don't know who we are. We don't know what we have. We don't know what we're doing. We don't know what we're supposed to be doing. So everything comes back to identity. Well, when you align with your original design, it causes identity to come into clear vision for you. You begin to get a sense of not only who you are, but why you are here and what you're supposed to be doing. So original design begins to align your mind, your will, your emotions, your spirit, your soul, and your body, and begins to aim you in a direction. So that's one of the reasons why that's an important topic to me. The second topic is emerging leaders. I talk a lot about emerging leaders because we're in a pivotal moment in the history of mankind. We're in a time now when, and it's always been this way, but if you're alive now, we're seeing things that we've never seen before. And so we recognize that what's happening right now, how we're handling what's happening right now, the things that are permitted, the things that are being normalized, the things that are being kicked out and pushed aside, all of those things are going to determine what kind of future our children will have. All of those things are going to determine what kind of world our children will be able to grow up in, what kind of opportunities they'll have, what things will they be able to do with their lives, will they be able to maximize their potential. We have a lot to say about that, but with what we permit today and with how we maximize our own potential. So emerging leaders become those who can recognize that they have an opportunity to step up and impact society, impact culture, impact the world with what's on the inside of them. Emerging leaders recognize that they have a sense of timing about now, and they feel like now is the time to move. They may not know exactly what to do, but there's a feeling on the inside that says now is the time to move, to do, to be, to become, to discover, to train, to educate. They have a sense of now. So the emerging leaders are very important in this hour. And finally, the third topic that I intentionally make a part of every conversation is mental wealth. And you notice I didn't say mental health. I said mental wealth. Every person has a wealth within them. See, I believe that we each have been endowed with certain abilities that we don't understand how to tap into. One of those is what I call an unfair advantage. I call it the human potential factor. It says this, that every person, every human being is born with the innate ability to overcome any obstacle, endure any struggle, and outlast any trouble that gets in the way of their purpose. I believe that with everything within me. And so I talk a lot about mental wealth, because when you begin to focus your attention on what you can do rather than what you can't do, when you begin to focus your attention on who you really are instead of who you're really not, when you begin to focus your attention on the things that bring life and give life to you instead of focusing on things and comparing yourself to others and the things that the world says is important. And man, if you're in that mix, man, no wonder people are committing suicide. No wonder people, the mental health issues are on such a high in this season. Is because we are focused on the wrong things. So I talk a lot about mental wealth. Mental wealth has to do with you understanding your capacity. It has to do with you knowing what you're carrying, have a sense of what you're carrying, and have a sense of your responsibility to protect it. We must protect the very precious things that we're carrying on the inside of us, the assignments, certainly the gifts and the talents, but the gifts and the talents have been given to us for a reason, and they should be speaking to our assignments that we have in the earth. When you stand before God, you're going to have to give an answer. Each one of us will have to give an account for what we've done with the life we lived. I often use this example. If I told my child to wash the dishes, and they went in the kitchen and did everything except wash the dishes. They swept the floor, they wiped down the counters, they took, put the food away and everything, but they didn't wash the dishes. What am I going to hold them accountable for? Sweeping the floor? I didn't tell them to sweep the floor. I told them to wash the dishes. So I'm going to hold them accountable for what I told them to do. It'll be the same for us. Each one of us will have to give an account for the assignment that we were sent here for. Well, guess what? That means that you had better know what your assignment is, because you can't give an account for it if you don't even know what it is. Okay, so I wanted to give that to you as a foundation. I want to make sure that every time we come on here, every time we have an audience, I want to make sure we speak to those things, because those are very important in this season and in this hour. All right, so let me encourage you with a small little poem that's going to help to do some of those. It speaks to all of those areas in one way or the other, and then we'll jump into our topic. The poem I'm going to encourage you with tonight, I can't even remember the name of it. I just remember the poem itself. But it says this: if you can't remember anything else, remember this truth about yourself. Say to yourself each day you arise, I'm going to live because I'm alive. I'm going to be because I am. I'm going to do because I can. I'm going to go because I'm willing. And I'm going to arrive because I'm not quitting. No, I won't quit and say it's no use, because I know that failure is no excuse. Therefore, I refuse to give up. I refuse to give in. I refuse to go down or under again. I have the spirit that cannot be conquered. And because of that, I am always triumphant. I hope that encourages you. I hope that you can begin to say some things like that to yourself, about yourself. The more you learn how to encourage yourself in the Lord, the stronger you'll be emotionally, the stronger you'll be mentally, and the stronger you'll be physically. How about that? Okay. All right. So thank you for allowing me to do that. Thank you for indulging me for those few moments. I want to encourage each of you, and I'll do this again at the end. If you have not audited, had not taken advantage of getting my new audio book, Redefine Your Original Design, I want to encourage you to do that. It helps you to begin to think differently about yourself, think differently about who you are. And it certainly addresses all of those three topics that I talked about being important. We address those things and redefine your original design. You can find the link to that audio book. You can find it in my bio. So make sure you take advantage of that, avail yourself to that resource. You don't want to miss resources that are going to stretch you. And that's definitely a resource that will stretch your mind and stretch your thinking. All right. So I think it's time to dive into and jump into this conversation. We're going to be talking tonight about business, family, and the future. Those three things individually, but those three things connected together. I have my friend, my brother, Nelson, the realtor, on here with me tonight. He is a man of business, he's a man of family, and he's a man that's concerned about the future. Hey, listen, if you have kids, you got to be concerned about the future, man. I don't understand how somebody can have kids and not be concerned about the future. That's crazy to me, so that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. He's loaded with some questions, man, and we're going to jump into some conversation. I want you to remember this is Ask Pastor Tim. So that means that you have the ability, you have the right, and you certainly have my encouragement to ask questions. Type questions in the chat. Hit me up later, whatever, but make sure you find a way to engage in this meaningful conversation that we'll have tonight. All right. Thank you again, everyone who's joined and who's jumped on. I appreciate you being on here with us. And I'm going to turn this thing over to Nelson. And you can tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're doing, and then we'll jump into those questions, man.
And thank you, Pastor Tim.
Yes,
I'm honored to be on this. I'm definitely, well, just for the audience, my name is Nelson Benavides. I have 5 kids. 5 kids. They range from a spectrum from high school, middle school, elementary, and toddler. So I'm definitely seeing the emotions on every level, the hormones and the stress that it takes. And but God is good, right? And folks ask me, how do you do it with 5 kids? I say, after 3, I think that's when it's like you're on autopilot at that point. But other than that, if you think about it too much, the gray hairs will start coming out too quick.
Hello.
But, yeah. So I wanted to ask you, and especially when you reached out to me earlier in the week, a question that I feel, when I talk to my friends, other men that have kids, one of the things, and this is actually something me and my wife have been thinking about, is when as believers that we are, one of our purposes is to serve our serve the world, right? To serve, to give back, to serve our church, to serve our community. And one thing I found that's been a little struggle is you realize as your kids are getting older, the pull is there, right? When my kids were small, me and my wife, we were in the church full time, right? We were serving, and it just feels now that it's like you kind of don't feel, how do I put the words? You don't feel the same as raising kids as serving, right? The gratification you get from serving, whatever it could be. I do, besides my real estate, I do FCA with Osceola County, and that I feel good. I go out to the high schools once a week, and I'm out with the sports teams. But to your question is, as a dad, as a father, I do have that longing, and you sometimes feel bad. So my question to you is that, how do we overcome those emotions or those feelings of we wish we could be on the field, but I do know our family is the mission field. But you understand what I'm trying to say is
yeah.
It doesn't feel the same, right? Like the kids, they're testing every fiber of your humanness, and
Yeah.
and so you don't feel that when you're serving, right? So I don't know, but that I feel that my wife and I, and even other men, that's especially now with our kids getting older, we feel we want to serve, right? We want to serve, but what would you say? I mean, what do we do? How do we combat that? I mean, how do we? I don't know. Sometimes yeah.
So I make sure that I'm hearing you correctly, and so that everybody in the audience can understand the question that I'm answering. So you're talking about the dichotomy between serving your family and serving God or your job or anything else,
Correct.
right? Because, anything else that pulls time away from your family now becomes family versus that, and sometimes it's church, sometimes it's our job, and both of those things are vital for the family, right? But they also cannot be, you have to be careful not to sacrifice the family for those things. And so many people, we grew up in a time when we watched, particularly men of God and businessmen as well, um, forsake their families for the sake of their business
Yeah.
and for the sake of the church, right?
Yes.
And we've seen how damaging that has been to children who are preachers' kids, right? They'll tell you in a heartbeat, right? So we've had the opportunity to see that. Now, if we still repeat the same mistakes that they made, shame on us, right? We have the opportunity to learn from their mistakes. So let's talk about that for just a second. What are their mistakes so that we can begin to put that in perspective with the question that you're asking, because you're asking, how do you manage the thoughts and the feelings and sometimes maybe even guilt of not serving enough in the church or not doing enough at your job to get ahead, right? Because you do whatever you do at your job because you want to get ahead, and all of that's for your family, right?
100.
And it's easily justifiable if somebody says, or if your wife says, man, I need you to do this, I need you to do that, but you never hear I know you're at work and you're working, and all of that, and it can seem it's easy to become a defensive in that, because look, man, I'm doing what I'm doing. I know I'm away, but I'm doing what I'm doing for you. I'm doing what I'm doing for the kids, And so that dynamic of how that has been seen, right? That's where the work has to happen, is how we see it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about that for a second. I was working at House of Hope for almost 10 years. House of Hope is a residential program for hurting teenagers and their families. Okay, if you ask me, it was more for the family than it was for the teenager, because the parents needed more work than the teens in most cases. Okay,
Yeah.
but the parents would bring their teens there and drop them off and basically say, fix them and we'll come back and get them. But it wasn't that kind of program. The kind of program it was where we fixed the whole family, right? Because the parents needed the most work. Well, me working there, I got a chance to see up close and personal the mistakes that parents were making with their kids. And I got a chance to see, how devastating it was to the children, some of the things that the parents were doing, not because they were bad parents. No, they were good parents, but they didn't understand how to balance the pull from what you're talking about, the pull from church and the pull from industry and from business versus that pull from the family. They didn't know how to balance it. They didn't know how to prioritize it. And it was that lack of priority that had them bringing their children to us. And they came to us, they would say, well, I can't do anything with them. I don't know what to do with them. They don't listen to me, and they don't. And I would say, well, what do you want me to do? It's your child. Okay. God gave them to you. You actually have the greater capacity to impact them than anyone else. You just don't know how to use it. You don't know how to utilize it. Why? Because you're seeing things in the wrong way. Okay. So now, having said that, let's start to bring some of those things into perspective. If you ask any man, who's a man, okay, and has a family, if you ask him what's the most important thing in the world to him outside of God, he's going to say his family.
Right.
Every day, all day, right? But if you ask the wife or ask the children, do they feel like they're the most important thing?
Wow.
There's your answer right there.
Oof.
That's where your answer is going to be right there. If they feel like the most important thing, then that answer was accurate. If they don't feel like the most important thing, then that means that that man is seeing something wrongly.
Yeah.
And he's misprioritizing the most important thing.
Wow.
So you have to change how you see it. Okay.
Yeah.
You have to begin to understand that, yes, your family is absolutely your mission field. But you have to look at it as not work, but you have to look at it as a privilege and an honor that you've been given to raise up soldiers, to raise up young men and raise up young women who have the ability to think, first of all, because you definitely got to teach them how to think, right? And have the ability, they have gifts and their talents that are going to change the world. And you raise them to be people whose mindsets are that we're going to do something to change the world. That's every parent has that opportunity. But how many parents take that opportunity? That's a different story. See, so it has to do with perspective. And if you're not a Christian, that can be a little more difficult to grasp that concept, because then your mind is going to go to, well, look, if I don't take care of these kids, who's going to take care of them? If I don't, you're going to go everything. If I don't do this, who's going to do it? If I don't, But when you're a Christian, you have a sense of understanding about what the word says. Seek first the kingdom of God and all its righteousness, and all of these things, all of what things? All of these things that you worried about, your job, your house, your car, their education, all of those things are going to be added. If you truly believe that, then you will never put anything before your family.
Come on. Yeah.
If you truly believe it. Okay. And the evidence that you are putting anything before the family it's evidence that you don't truly believe it. You want to, but you don't. Okay, so I hope I gave that. I wanted to give that question context for what I was about to say, because again, if you're not a Christian, it's a little more difficult to grab hold of that. But when you are a Christian, you have something to stand on. You have what God has said. If you came to me and you said, my refrigerator broke, and you said, I'm going to fix your refrigerator. Just give me a couple of days. I'll be over there on Thursday to fix your refrigerator. Do I have to keep looking for somebody to fix it on Tuesday and Wednesday? No, because I have your word.
Yeah.
I have your word that you're going to fix it. And if I believe you and take you at your word, then I stop looking for someone to fix it. Now, if I don't believe you, then I'm going to still be looking for somebody just in case. Just in case you don't come through. If you come through, good. But if you don't, I'm going to have an ace in the hole. See, that kind of thinking, let me ask this question. Where is the faith in that kind of thinking? That's a good question.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And you can make a case both ways, but it's something that has to be evaluated. And it's not something that we can just say, well, I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm trying doing the best that I can. I hope you are doing the best that you can. But is the best that you can working? Because if the best that you can is not working, that's no indication that you're a bad person. It's an indication that you need something that works. You need to find something that works. Okay? And for most of us, Nelson, it's our thinking.
Yeah.
Our thinking is what doesn't work. But we try and change everything else except our thinking. All right. That's all I got to say about that.
That's good. Well, let me ask you that. Piggybacking on what you're saying there, what would you say to men who, as an entrepreneur, we don't get a check and just because we show up, right? We know that it takes time, it takes effort, it takes creative thinking, and by the end of the day, you got to put in more hours, right? You got to put in more hours, more other than clocking in, right? So
yeah.
what would you say to men that are in that phase of building an empire for their family? And what you're saying right there, that is truth. Like, you know, even the poem you said, that was amazing. Honestly, it encouraged me, because if I read that every day, it makes me align and realize that what God has given me is the gift, is the mission, and it helps me focus, right? But we do want to provide. And so I guess the question is, how do we build our faith on
Mhm.
trust God that the empire will take care of itself? You know, how, you know, as an entrepreneur, right? I mean, we like,
Whew. That's a delicate dance, man. It is a delicate dance. I'm not going to try and make it seem like, oh, you just did. No, it is a delicate dance. And it's one that every day you have to get up and war with that every day.
yeah,
Okay? If you conquered it yesterday, that was yesterday. You got to conquer it all over again today,
correct.
you know? And so it becomes that thing where you said, how would I talk to a man about that? Well, let's talk about things that men that are important to men. Okay, a lot of men, to in their spare time, or they may take up something, softball or baseball, some type of sport, something that allows them to get that energy out, right?
Yeah,
And they could go and work all day and still go and play a game.
yeah, you're right.
Okay, because while they're working, they're doing their work, right? But in their mind, they know that that game is going to energize them, even though it's going to, they're going to expend energy
Yeah,
doing it. Listen very carefully. They're going to expend energy doing it, but that's going to be an energy that they are going to feel good about.
yes, correct. Yeah,
Same thing, same concept with the family. You're going to expend energy, but you have to recognize, and so again, that's why it's the thinking and how we see it. You have to recognize that there's no greater game than that one. There's no greater reward than what's happening in your own household.
mm-hmm.
So you have to take that energy and you have to use that energy in a positive way, in a way that causes you to be able to not just function, but to show up as the influencer that you are,
Yeah,
and be influencing in a way that you want to influence. We're influencers one way or the other,
right.
right? We can be influencing negatively and not even really know it. No, I want to be influencing the way I want to influence my kids. One of the greatest, I talk about this a lot because it's impacted me. So the Rocky series, right? All the Rocky movies, the greatest one to me, I think it was the fifth one. I may be wrong, but I think it was the fifth one. But this was his son. They introduced his adult son. Okay, remember that one?
Yeah,
With the Rocky, where they introduced his adult son, and his adult son was helping him to train, right? And so the normal Rocky thing, right? In the ring, doing his thing, right? You think he's out, and then he comes back miraculously, and his son was ringside watching it up close and personal. At the end of the fight, his son says to him, "That was the greatest thing I've ever seen before."
wow.
Imagine, as a father, that you do something and your son is so impressed that he says to you, "That was the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life."
Come on. Yeah,
What?
yeah,
Come on, man.
come on.
That's the kind of impact you want to have with your children, man. We may never get it. It may not get to that degree, but man, that should be a goal of every parent, is to impact their children in such a way that their children think that they're the greatest, they've given them the greatest examples
Yeah,
that they could possibly get.
no, you're right. That's good.
What's greater than that,
Come
man?
on.
What's
That's
better
it.
than that? You
Right.
know? So again, it's about how we see it. So you have to see it that way in order to be able to pull and glean that kind of energy and that kind of meaning out of it. If you don't see it that way, your mind, you won't even think like that. You be
Yeah,
like, well, kids, they better appreciate what I do.
yeah. That's good. That's good stuff. Wow. And do you when the men you have come across this season in your life, do you see men grabbing hold of that?
I see some. I do see some. They are few and far in between. And when I say few and far in between, when you look at the masses of the men, they're few and far in between. But yes, I know some men that are hungry like that, and that they're doing everything within their power to embrace that concept and see their families in that way. And they are, they're actively making choices that reflect that. Because it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to make choices that reflect it.
Yeah.
Okay. What am I sacrificing? What am I giving up? Come on, man. Our parents gave up stuff for us, right? They sacrificed stuff so that we could have a better chance, a better opportunity. What are we sacrificing? What are we really sacrificing for our children? And in this day, with all of the luxuries that are around, all of the things that we get to enjoy, that becomes a really legitimate question. What are we really sacrificing? Am I sacrificing my dream? And if I'm sacrificing my dream, I don't want to throw a wrench in it, but should I be sacrificing my dream? Because here's the beauty. The beauty of it is that if you dream right, okay, your dream will never take away from your family. It'll only add to them when you dream right. Now, that's a whole nother conversation about dreaming right. We'll have to come back to that and just do that, dreaming right one night, okay? But there's a way to dream, okay? Because my personal belief is that we shouldn't sacrifice our dreams, because God gave us our dreams as builders.
Yes.
He gave us the dream to build, not just build myself, to build my family, to build my friends, to build my community. Dreams are supposed to build.
Yeah.
So if you throw them away, it's because you don't understand it.
Wow.
Right? So yeah, like I said, that's another.
We
gotta table that.
That's definitely going to be a good one, because I think I asked you this earlier. That do enough men communicate this? Where do men actually pursue their dreams, or they give up of hopelessness, or oh, my family destroyed my dream? I've come across men that hopeless, and they have wealth. They have accumulated wealth, miserable.
Bro, listen, I have tried to give up on my dream.
Yeah. I
have literally tried to, because I love my family so much. And there have been times when I thought my dream was, I thought my dream was causing me to sacrifice my family. And I didn't want it, even though within my heart, I knew that wasn't what I was doing, but I didn't even want it to look that way. I didn't even want it to feel that way or seem that way to them. And if I couldn't clearly communicate to them in a way that would cause them to understand that everything they were going through is building us, if I couldn't communicate that to them, I was like, I'll just back away from it. But God wouldn't let me. Would not let me. So I had to learn how to, watch this word, communicate better. Because my responsibility is to communicate the dream to those who will help me build. And if I can't properly communicate it to them, then that means that I'm building by myself. I should not be
to who communicate to men?
To the family, because they're the first line of defense. They're the ones that will be the first ones who suffer, just like they'll be the first ones who reap the benefits.
Right.
See?
Correct.
So they're the first line, man. And whether they are actively engaged in it or not, that's besides the point. Okay.
That's right. Yeah.
Especially if they're not actively engaged in it. Man, you had really better do a good job of selling them on this thing, so that whatever sacrifices you make, that they have a firm sense and understanding that this is daddy's love and not his neglect.
Wow. Wow.
See, if they start seeing what you're doing as neglect, then you have not communicated it properly. And that's a part of dreaming right. They have got to be able to understand that this is daddy's love. Okay.
Wow.
What does the scripture say? It pleased God to bruise Jesus.
Okay.
God was pleased with what Jesus was going through.
Wow.
Why? Because of the end goal. And it even says about Jesus, for the joy that was set before him, he endured the cross.
Mm.
Who set that joy before him? The Father had to set the joy before him. The Father had to give him enough buy-in.
That's right.
That he would be willing to go through whatever he needed to go through to get to that end goal.
Yes.
So everything I'm saying, this is not stuff that just sounds good. This is scriptural.
Yeah.
Okay? It's the very thing that God's relationship with his son Jesus, that's how it was. Right? Jesus was going to have to suffer some things that no man should have to suffer.
That's right.
But he was going to have to suffer them in order to get the end goal. So the end goal had to be important enough to him for him to endure the cross.
Ooh. Man, as you're saying that, I'm thinking that's us as men, as the head of our households. Are we willing to walk with our cross and communicate? I've seen men that, you know, build the empire, but the family is not involved.
Family is whack.
Yeah.
Family relationships are whack, and they have suffered. And if you talk to those kids, they may appreciate what he's done, but they will still feel the neglect and the gap in that relationship.
Correct.
And they won't want to grow up to be like him. They'll want to grow up to be not like him.
Come on. Yes. Wow. That's
because they won't want to do to their kids what he did to them.
correct.
Even if it does mean that they get to build an empire, because empires go and they come, man. That's not what matters. What matters are the relationships, the family ties, the loving binds that we have with each other. That's what really matters. And people will say that with their mouths, but do your actions align with that?
Correct.
You see?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's good.
What else you got for us?
You know, what you said earlier before I asked the question regarding, you know, even just serving, you know, we've grown up with PKs walling out, or, you know, just we have peers around us that have hurt from their parents serving in the church. And, you know, that's something my wife and I, and we don't know, right? At the end of the day, we don't know the gauge of what's too much time involved, right? There's that balance. And I'm sure you've seen it where as kids grow up, they might feel a resentment because most of their time was in the four walls. Yes, we are the church and serve our community, and that is our family. But that I guess that's something I can speak to other men and say, you know, check me. Am I spending too much time? Am I, like you said, right? The gauge is, let me ask the family.
Yeah.
If they feel they're a part of
it.
it.
You know, one of the things, Nelson, and I'm going to say this because of what you just said, one of the things that we did when our kids were at home, we began to have these meetings. We'd have family meetings, right? and I don't know how many families have family meetings, but our family meetings were to gauge how we were doing as parents.
Wow.
That's what our family meetings were about. It wasn't about going on trips and vacations and stuff. We wanted to gauge how we were doing as parents. And so I would ask hard questions, and they were hard for me, to my kids, like, tell me what you really feel about how I do this or how I handle this. How do you really feel about that? And we gave them the freedom to be honest with us about it. And it hurt, man. Ooh.
Wow.
We had times, we had moments when, man, I cried in my daughter's lap because she was telling me that I had an impact on her, that, man, I didn't want to have that impact, but what I had been doing or how I had been doing it was having that impact, right? And I needed her to understand that that really wasn't what I wanted, and I wanted to do better. So we would have meetings like that, and it, man, our kids, they understood that they had a voice. That was number one. Okay, they had a voice. They could voice how they were feeling without it being, repercussions. You don't talk to me like that. We didn't have that element because we gave them the freedom. Now, were there times when, one of my children, one of my kids, but because of their particular giftings, sometimes they can come off like it's disrespectful. We had to learn, Nelson, how not to judge this child.
Wow. Yeah.
As being disrespectful, but how to understand that they had a gift that they were still learning, and we were learning the gifts too, right? We didn't know what that was about, and so we could. Remember, I said it has to do with how you see things. Yeah. We could have chosen to see this as she's just a wayward child and don't want to listen and just pop off at the mouth. We could have chosen to see it that way, but we chose to see it as this is a gift. God, how do we nurture? How do we help nurture this gift? I don't know what it's going to be used for, but I know it's going to be used for something awesome and amazing in this world and in your kingdom. See, you got the choice. You can always choose how you choose to see something, right? Nobody can make you see it anyway. You have that choice. And so that's the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. I'll say things like when I counsel parents from House of Hope, I say things like, I encourage you to make yourself accountable to your children. Ooh, you want them to be accountable to you, but are you accountable to them?
Yeah.
Most parents aren't. That has been my experience, is that most parents are not accountable to their children. And that becomes a missed opportunity.
What do you mean accountable? Break it down for me a little bit more as a parent.
I'll make it real easy, right? Because this was one of the first times that I had to deal with this, right? You know how you tell your child to do something. Now this is probably something that my generation heard a lot more than the generations now, okay? But if your parent tell you to do something, and if you question them about what they were telling you to do, right? You didn't question them about what they were telling you to do. Because I said so. You'd hear that, right? Okay. And the reigning prevailing thought and belief was that parents' word was not to be disputed or refuted.
Correct.
Okay. So that was one of the things that I had to shut off from my past and choose not to assume that same kind of thinking. Because had I done that, and in fact, I started out doing that. And one day the Lord said to me, because one of my kids asked me why. And they ask why all the time. That's what kids do, right? Why? Take that and move that over there. Why? Come here. Why? Go there. Why? That's what kids do. right? And I found myself, I found that old, my dad rising up in me, right? To say, because I said so. And before I could get it out of my mouth, the Lord, it's like he stayed my tongue. And it caused me to hear something in that very moment. And what I heard was this: why demands a response.
Really? Wow.
A question demands an answer. So if I am not giving my children the answers to their whys, even if it's I don't know, okay? If I'm not giving them the answers, then by default, I am stunting their growth.
Wow.
Because what that does is that begins to build a propensity inside of them to expect that their that their questions will not be answered. You know what that's the biggest reflection on, or who that's the biggest reflection on in the long run? God.
Oh, come on. Wow. Wow.
They'll grow to believe that God really doesn't love them and really doesn't care because he doesn't answer their questions.
Wow.
So the Lord stopped me in that moment and he said, give her an answer. And from that moment on, I stopped doing that. Now, mind you, I had to change my thinking about it to stop it altogether. But that was the beginning of a pivotal moment for me to understand. And that was one of the reasons why my wife and I talked about that. That was one of the reasons why we decided to give our children a voice, give them the ability to say what was on their hearts and on their minds to us. And so that's why we would have those family meetings so that we could exercise that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I'm gonna start doing that because you want them to give the voice, and
you do.
You know what
Yeah.
you said right there. I just read in one of the books I'm reading. The author was saying regarding even the simplest of questions, and like I said, I got kids from pre-K all the way to high school, and so I'm getting all them strange questions about God. And the author was saying that he was a professor at Oxford University in London. And when the student asked the professor, well, she was telling her that when she was a little girl, she would ask her mom about Jesus. And because the mom was busy or, whatever could be happening, she kind of ignored her and brushed it away. That moment, that woman said that because her mom didn't answer, like she was being genuine, a kid is being genuine. And see what you're saying right there, it's really checking me because I speak the truth. I mean, sometimes you just feel overwhelmed or you're tired.
Sure.
You really do, as fathers, have to really out that so they know that we care. That woman ended up growing up to one of the most intellectual atheists. She seeked her life journey was to seek answers. Became very intellect. I believe her goal was to be a professor at the university, but her relationship with God was the questions at that young age weren't answered, and we don't know what happened after, but she grew up denying God, right? Because of that question that trickled into effect. And so, I mean, I'm encouraged by what you're saying because that is part of the struggle, right? Because we're building, we're working hard. As men, we're in charge and we have a lot, but answering a simple question, like you said, but giving your kids a voice is answering those questions because it's like, go ahead, speak, we'll hear you out. So I think that's good. So
yeah. Parenting, man, is so, it's such a wonderful opportunity to grow. And I'm not talking about for the kids, I'm talking about for the parents. Parenting is a wonderful opportunity for parents to grow. Man, you can learn more from your kids than you learn in university if you approach it right, And so I believe wholeheartedly in that. And I thank God that he allowed us to learn on the job. You know, he allowed us to learn as we were going through and you know, raising our family. He allowed us to see certain things and to learn and to implement. And like I said, working at House of Hope, I was seeing all the mistakes that everybody else was making. I was like, okay, I'm not making that mistake. You know, we laugh about it sometimes now, but you know, I talk about when I would come home at night because I worked long hours there too. When I would come home late in the evening or at night, and she would tell me something that our kids do, and I went, "That's it, that's all." I'd go and give them a hug because I'm like, if you know what I seen today and what I dealt with today, you know. But yeah, I got to see what the mistakes that other parents were making, and and had the opportunity to choose not to make those same mistakes, man. And so I thank God that we were able to, you know, to have pivotal moments that our kids can, you know, look back on and see our efforts to be better parents. You know what I'm saying? When I think about my own childhood, and I mean, you know, for a long period of time, I was probably a teenager. You know, I was a teenager. I was a junior in high school before I ever had a relationship with my dad.
Wow.
Yeah. Before, up until that, I didn't think he cared.
Wow.
I really didn't think he cared. Right. But I got hurt in my senior year of senior year of football. I was a star running back at my school, and every week for 2 years, everybody in the town would always be talking about me at the end of the games and the weeks and whatever. My dad never said anything. He never even came to a game.
That's heavy. That's heavy.
Right.
Yeah.
The only reason he came when he came was because my nephews had been visiting us for the summer, and they were about to go back to New York. Okay, and we were living in Georgia, and it just so happened that our first game of the season was just before they were leaving to go back home. And so they wanted to come to the football game, so he brought them to a football game. That was the first game he had ever come to, and that was the first game of my senior year. I played all 4 years, and you know, and like I said, it was a star back the whole time, right? So that was the first time. And my nephews went back to New York. Next week, he was at another game by himself, right? So he finally started coming, and he came to every game after that, up until the game that I got hurt, right? And when I got hurt, the ambulance wasn't coming on the field. He didn't see nobody coming, so he went and got his car, and he was going to drive on the field to get me and take me to the hospital. But they did, right? But my point in all of that is, once he started, when he came and saw the impact that I had on everybody else and how everybody else loved me and all that, right? For some reason that woke him up, you know, and he started coming to games. So he only got to come to like 5 games of mine, my entire high school career. But those 5 games were the most meaningful of them all.
Come on.
You know, and after I got hurt, you know, because that ended my football season. I had a ligament tear. Ended my football season. And man, it's like my dad became like almost like a best friend to me. We really began to develop a relationship, and I got to see him in a different way, you know. But yeah, I was a senior in high school, man.
Did you realize before he started coming of that? I mean, was that normal, or did you feel like friends, parents come? Did it ever phase you, or I mean,
it did. Let's put it this way: it had to phase me internally, right? But on a subconscious level. But on a conscious level, I was used to it because I was used to him being that way.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So on a conscious level, that was just my dad. He ain't do sports. He ain't like sport. You know, he was just that kind of person, right? That was my conscious way of dealing with it. But subconsciously, deep within, which it would have taken me years to even realize how it impacted me. Yeah, it was impacting me on a subconscious level. But I didn't like him. I didn't like my dad until my senior year in high school. And after that, he became a hero to me,
Come on.
you know. And my dad had a third grade education, man, but the way he dealt with people and just the simple things like, you know, he would never scold me. And I, even before, he would never scold me with after the fact stuff, didn't I tell you not to? He never did that. I remember I wrecked the car that he gave me. I had been asking him for this car, right? I had been asking him for this car for like months, man. And he finally gave me the car. On the day he gave it to me, I wrecked it, man.
How would that even go back home? You run away?
Man, it was bad. It was bad. It was bad. But you know what he said? And this is how he handled everything. When I told him about it, he took a deep breath and he said, this is classic my dad. He said, let's see what we can do now. That's how we handled everything. Let's see what we can do now. So he never scolded me after the fact. And I remember that so specifically because it impacted me, the fact that he didn't. That impacted me, right? Because you expect, that your dad gonna be like, he gonna come down on you for a little bit, at least, but he would never do that, man. He'd take a deep breath as if to push all of that back down or whatever. And he said, let's see what we can do now. And then he was always about the solution, always about the solution. And that has stayed with me to this day. My mindset is like that. I'm looking for the solution. What can we do now? I know this is bad. Man, I hate that we're here, but what can we do now? Solution oriented. And so little things like that, man. Big impact on kids. And so, just imagine if my dad had been doing that when I was much smaller and I grew up with that. Some of the things that I struggled with, I may not have struggled with them.
Wow.
That's the reality.
No, but that's real. At the end of the day, in what, going back to the beginning, we need to invest in our families. And like I told you, I'm in a season where we do feel the pull of serving our church, especially, every church is different, but there's a need, right? There's a need for us.
Yeah, there's need. Yeah,
there is a joy with that, but the sacrifice it takes, and sometimes we're like, oh, the family they'll be fine. But like what you're saying right there, honestly, I don't want my son to feel that way.
Yeah.
We learn.
Yeah.
I'm learning from you. I'm learning from my parents and what they didn't do or my father as a godly man. Well, as a man, but man, praise God for community, right? That's I'm learning a lot from you. So I'm always learning, because like you said earlier, we will give an account, right? I mean, what drives me is God is going to ask me what I do with the gifts that he gave me.
Yes, sir.
Want to hear those?
Yes, sir.
Words. So.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That you can count on that, man. We will give an account.
Oof.
And you can't change anything in your past. You can't go back and redo anything. But man, every day that we wake up is a brand new opportunity for us to shift. And I know I talk about our thinking a lot, but I'm telling you, it's our thinking that let me put it this way. So when I talk about the emerging leaders, right? One of my mentor, Dr. Miles Monroe, used to say this: everyone is a leader, right? Because you have your own uniqueness that God has given to you, your own fingerprint, right? And no one else can show your uniqueness to the world except you. So you're the leader in that, right? I'll take it even further. You're either the leader of your own resistance or you're the leader of your own revolution. One or the other. Okay? And so when you discover or begin to gain a sense of who you are, you have an opportunity to now become the leader of your own revolution. Instead of trying to keep things out, Okay, you've heard the saying, the best the best defense is a good offense. Well, this is that thinking, right? Because when you think about resistance, resistance is trying to keep something off of you or trying to keep something from coming in. Well, by default, you also are running the risk of keeping anything from getting out. When you're spending so much energy trying to keep something from getting in, you're also keeping something from getting out. Okay, but when a revolution is a going forward, a busting through doors, a moving, getting the thing that's in you, that uniqueness that's in you, out of you into the world where it's supposed to be. Right. See, and when you're moving, you know, nobody has to. A dump truck going down the road at 90 miles an hour doesn't have to defend itself. Okay, people get out of its way, right? Because of the best offense, the best defense is a good offense. So, yeah, and I'll talk more about that another time, about that leadership, that emerging leader within every person. But here's what I'll say. I'll say this again: you're either the leader of your own resistance, or you're the leader of your own revolution. You determine which one by how you think.
Wow, that's good.
By how you think. Man, we're at the top of the hour, bro.
That's good. I learned a lot. I'm always trying.
It goes fast. It goes fast. Sure. Man, thank you so much for doing this with me, man. I definitely want to have you back again, bro. I love talking with you, and you have the greatest questions, and we get to dialogue and chop it up, man. And we have to do this kind of thing. We have to challenge each other. We have to challenge each other's thinking so that we can have an opportunity to learn and grow from each other. You know, like I said, I've seen everybody else's mistakes. That was an opportunity for me. I could have gone home and repeated the same ones, or not even recognize that I was repeating the same ones, or it could have made me pay attention, you know, to make sure that I'm not repeating the same ones. And that's what it did for me. But it was a choice. I had to make a choice, right. You know, and I had to shift in how I thought. You know, that was the first thing that I recognized. Man, my thinking about this is really not helping. So I had to change my thinking. And so I encourage people all the time to be mindful of your thinking and always be willing and ready to shift your thinking. That's what Jesus came to the world to do, to change the thinking. Repent, the word itself literally means to change your thinking. Yeah. Change how you think. Because if you change your behavior and you don't change your thinking, you're just going to end up doing the same thing again anyway. You have to change how you think about it, how you see it, in order to actually change the behavior.
Wow, that's good.
Okay. So thank you, everyone. I hope you guys were able to really glean something out of our conversation here. I hope you drop some questions in the chat. I'm going to read your conversations. I'm going to read your comments, and I'm going to read your, if you have any questions in there, and I will respond to them. Absolutely. Thank you again for joining us. And as always, man, I want to encourage you to make sure that you live full so that you can die empty. You want to leave this earth empty. All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you for joining. We'll see you in a couple. Well, actually, that just reminds me, we'll be back next week so that we can get back on track doing every other week. So we will do it again next week, next Tuesday. I'll make sure I put the information out there so you guys can know. We'll be back on next Tuesday, and then we'll get back to every other Tuesday. So again, good night. Thanks, and we'll talk with you soon.
Good night.